every single one of my days starts with writing down what I'm intending to create.
Welcome to Aligned with Purpose. We're here in the Expert Series, and I'm so honored just to introduce you to such a remarkable person whose life's purpose is really to inspire lasting change and success in others. And this is Ryan Cass. Over a decade ago, Ryan decided to really break through the cycle of adversity inside his family, which had long been plagued by alcohol and emotional abuse. And really through unwavering determination, he's been able to not only transform his own life, but become a guiding light for countless others. And I already told Ryan, I was like, we should have started filming like 5 minutes ago, because just already what he's doing right now in his life and the scholarships that he's providing for others, it's insane what he's been able to accomplish. And so I can't wait to talk more about that. He founded One Today, and he really teaches others the power of habits in goal setting. And he does this specifically to students and professionals. So we're definitely going to talk a bit today about goal setting. And I mean, he's reached thousands through not only his speaking engagements, but also his one-to-one coaching and his podcast. He's got, how many episodes do you have now? Over 100?
114 as of today, 1 year straight, 52 weeks in a row.
Insane. So you've got an incredible podcast. So definitely add that to your list. Win Today. Okay. He interviews incredible thought leaders, authors, CEOs. It's just so inspiring. And he also co-founded Champion Tribe, a community excelling in 5 key pillars: family, faith, fitness, finance, and foundation, impacting lives around the world. So we're going to talk about all of these things, but more importantly, he challenges himself. And I have seen this firsthand, how he pushes himself and pushes everybody else around him in his tribe just to a whole nother level. So I can't wait to talk more and just hear your expertise just shine through. But welcome, Ryan.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jamie. It's an honor to be here. And I love all of the work that you do. And you said some pretty cool things about me. Maybe makes me sound a little cooler than I may be, but ultimately I'm here to create an impact. And I believe that the greatest accomplishment in this world is never going to be, anything that you may read about me, but ultimately the lives that I get to touch and people I get to serve. And that's really what brings me the most joy. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes, and that at least one person benefits from it.
Thank you. And I almost feel like we should start with what we were just talking about over this past weekend and what you were able to do, because I think that's such an incredible way to give back to the community. So, okay, Ryan, let's go back in time. What were you doing this weekend?
This weekend, well, first I'll say that I believe the best gift is to give back. And that's something that's really important to me, is to be able to pay it forward. And I believe that how we make this world a better place, Jamie, simply starts by helping one person. And the beauty of it is that by helping one person, I don't believe that we'll ever truly know the impact of our actions. And helping one person may lead that one person to help 5, and that those 5 to help 10. And by doing one simple thing, in many cases, we can impact generations and make this world better. And one way that I'm committed to doing that is through the Be the First One Scholarship Fund, which I launched in 2022. It was a goal that I wrote down because, one, as I look back on life, and as you mentioned in the intro, I am who I am today in large part because of the greatest gift I was ever given, and that is growing up in a family with a systemic trend of alcohol abuse. That is what has shaped my way of being and why I show up the way I do. And when I look at the stats, that there's over 45 million Americans that face student debt, and there's over $1.7 trillion in total student debt out there. it's personal for me because I was one of those students that came out with a lot of student debt, and somebody that had come through one of these households. And I'm thinking, man, when you come through one of these households, you're already less likely to succeed per the statistics. And if you're coming through one of those households, you probably don't have there's probably not a whole lot of money available. And so I figured, well, how can I do something about it to where I'm targeting students that are just like me and make their future a little bit easier and get them on a path to financial freedom a little bit faster. And when you grow up in one of these homes, you have two choices. You can be the next one to carry on the trend, which studies show that that's likely, or you can be the first one to break it and do something different. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to launch Be the First One and throw it out there, see how much money we can bring in. And this past weekend, I was meeting each of the 4 recipients from 2023 in person and giving them their big scholarship check and letting them know ultimately that I'm here for them. And it's now in the second year. We've given out $13,000 in scholarships to 8 students. And the hardest part for me, Jamie, is just picking who gets it. There's been over 130 applications for this.
Wow.
But my dream one day with this will happen is, I will give somebody or multiple students full rides. We'll get there. But you got to start somewhere.
I love what you just said of you got to just start somewhere. But I also see that your vision is expansive. And I think the fact that you've already started and you see that 13,000 has already been a thing is that motivation and that momentum to keep you going towards this. Like, it's that spark inside of you that you need in order to be like, this is possible. This is already happening. And I bet it's just so special just to connect with them and get to just see their faces. Wow. Thank you for bringing that in. And I would love to go back in time a bit more. And because I know, and I've seen you speak, right? You got to give a presentation to our community and go deep on a bit of your backstory. But, I would love to hear it a bit now too. So I'd be curious if you could share one of those, if you could think back to maybe a pivotal moment that you had in your personal life that really reshaped your perspective on life and success, and then how that impacted your mission to really help others break free and really change their lives too.
I think back to a particular moment where when I go back and tell people the story about growing up, I paint the picture that you've got this family on the outside that looks like a normal, happy family, healthy kids and healthy parents, had the fun job. My dad ran an Outback Steakhouse growing up, and I got to be the kid that I'd be in the back of the restaurant making bloomin' onions with my sister when we were 5 years old. And most people listening, probably almost everybody listening, has been to Outback and had a bloomin' onion, or at least what a bloomin' onion is, because so many people talk about it. And the outside picture looked amazing. Like, man, look at the happy family, and the kids were making bloomin' onions and running around, and I would bring bloomin' onions to kids at school and sneak it in my bag and make sure my parents didn't know I was taking food from the restaurant. And we played sports, did all of the things. And similar to if you see a home listing, let's say on Zillow, you're like, man, like, that's the coolest house ever. And then you click in the pictures, you're like, whoa, like, I wouldn't want to buy that thing. Like, that wallpaper is from 1920. There's so much work I'm going to have to do. The outside doesn't always reflect the inside. And if you looked inside our house, a typical night would be that, my father would struggle with alcohol and stay very late with coworkers partying and and then didn't handle the alcohol very well at times, and there were some pretty vicious scenes that would erupt at home late at night. I would show up to school late often and lie to teachers about, why I'm late. I overslept, or, I quote, ran into a wall and that's why I have dark circles. Like, everything was just a lie. And the night that really formed me was I knew it was going to be a difficult night because I could just tell how fast the car was coming home. My dad's car was coming home, and how loud the music was blaring were like two of my indicators. And this particular night, car's coming in hot, music's blaring, my mom's acting a little strange, and next thing I know, the fireworks go off in the house. And this was a little bit different, and I ran down the hallway, and I look over in the bathroom, and I see my mom crying and yelling and screaming, and I see on lipstick, she wrote on the mirror in lipstick, David loves Corey, and my mom's name is Rosie. So I was too young to know what really just happened is my dad just got caught. And then from there, just further chaos ensues. My mom's attempting to just down a bottle of pills really quick, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And a door knock comes, and it's the police, and it's me answering the door at 6, 7 years old, shaking like a leaf. And the cops are like, "What's going on here?" And I didn't really know what to say other than, my mom's mad about some other woman. And it was that night, Jamie, that, because there were so many other nights that were so similar to that one, but it was that night I'll never forget promising myself, like, I'm never going to carry on this trend, and the buck stops with me. So from the time I've been 7 years old, I knew, like, there's no way on God's green earth that I'm going to be this next one to carry on this trend, because it had just gone from family line to family line to family line, and here we are, it's in my house, and I'm thinking, you know what, not in my house. But that's where I also say that was the best gift I've ever received, because if it wasn't for that, and if it wasn't for those moments, you and I likely wouldn't be talking right now. The Win Today podcast wouldn't exist. The Be the First One scholarship probably wouldn't exist. And I believe that life gives us all gifts, that some are packaged like gifts and some are packaged a little bit differently. It's just, can you still see a gift in those things that are packaged a little bit differently? And when you can, it's the most beautiful thing and powerful thing that you can have in this life.
Wow, you have such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all in your perspective, and it's neat that you're able to look back and really realize how much that set you up today to want to be that light for others and to break the chain, the generational chain that existed before. And then I'd be curious, now I'm thinking of the champion tribe and the 5 key pillars that you focus on over there. And I'd be curious, like, these were all, I'm sure, of all your experience from before, these were all the fixings of what you've created to be your epic life. Like that life that you would love to be living and breaking the chains. And you've developed a formula and a system that's repeatable for others. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, about the formula. So one thing that I believe will help anybody to win in life and to create the life that they want in any capacity, whether it's with your family, faith, fitness, finance, foundation. Those are the 5 F's that I live life by, and there's no one right answer there, but it really starts with identifying what's important to you. But to make it an acronym that people will remember, now here's my framework, and it starts with 1 W. Write everything down. The thing that really, where my life really started to change, I made the commitment to not carry on the trend. Now, I continued going through life from those years of, age 7 to about 15, 16, where I was still pretty upset at the world and thinking, I know I'd made the promise, but it didn't heal my anger immediately. And I figured, man, like, why is this happening to me? Why is this going on? And I'm upset. And, this, what did we do for this? And, and it wasn't until I was going to college and I was wondering what makes people like Tony Robbins and Richard Branson and Michael Jordan so different than other people. What's the secret sauce? And I found the common thread that they write their goals down. And I'm thinking, is it as simple as grabbing a pen and paper? Then you can change your life just by writing down what you want and looking at it every day. And sure enough, by doing that, it gave me 3 big things: focus, drive, and direction. And every single one of my days starts with writing down what I'm intending to create and what's 1 to 3 things I can do that align to my goals. And that pen and paper has brought so many amazing things, but it just made me start feeling better. So the W is write everything down. Whether it's, I don't care if it's your grocery list, but it definitely must be your goals, and get in the habit of writing. And we're spelling winner here, by the way. Okay. Is identify what's important to you. And that could be anything. So think about, because people ask, well, what's the starting point for all of this? Do I just get a pen and paper and start writing down goals? Sure, but to make them meaningful, you've got to identify what is it that really means a lot to you. So for some people, it may be their family and their faith and their fitness. For others, it may be their finance and travel and the environment. Everyone's got something that's important to you, but once you are operating from a place of, hey, these are the most important things to me in life, and you assign deep meaning to it, you're able to move forward much more efficiently, and you're much more able just to take that first step and then that next step, because these things are coming from the heart. So once you've done that, you've identified what's important to you, then identify, well, okay, if family is important to you, identify, what does success look like? And maybe, you're somebody listening that wants to spend more time with your family. Okay, well, maybe success looks like you are having a family retreat once a quarter. And that's something that you can measure. One thing that's probably the coolest thing about Champion Tribe is seeing how many people are reporting improvements in their marriages, because they're around a group of people now that are so focused on family that it's almost forcing them, like, hey, I'm going to spend more time with my wife or my husband or my kids. It's beautiful. And that gets us into the N. So now we're at win. And the N is, once you've identified what's important to you and you've identified what does success look like, you notify people of those things. And you notify people, here's what's important to me, and here's what I'm going after. Because when you do that, here are my 3 favorite stats in the world. When you write down your goals, you're 42% more likely to accomplish them. Wow. When you share your goals or what's important to you and success to a group of people, you're 70% more likely to accomplish them. And my newest favorite stat of them all is, when you share those goals and what's important to you and what success looks like to you repeatedly to the same group of people, your odds of accomplishing that thing increases to 90%. So this is ultimately how you can hack life and win at life, just by asking yourself those deep questions, reflecting, thinking about everything that really comes to mind, and then narrowing down on what are those 3 to 5 things that really truly stand out for you. And after that, we go into the next N, which is really where you build the systems. Goals at the end of the day are just desired outcomes. What enables you to accomplish a goal is having a strong system behind it. And your system is fed from your habits, and your habits are fueled off of your discipline. My favorite book of all time is James Clear's Atomic Habits. And James says, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We only fall to the level of our systems. And so the second N is you normalize behaviors. So let's say that your goal is to, or what's important to you is your health and wellness, and success looks like running your first marathon. Now, that's not something that you can wait until December 31st and then you get off the couch and you're like, man, I'm going to go run a marathon, or you might be in pain for a very long time. So you build a system around running, and you start building this identity as a runner, that I'm going to go run for 3 days a week. One day I'm going to go easy. One day I'm going to go long, and maybe one day I'll do a speed workout. And you schedule that time, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you normalize that behavior of being a runner, and you start shifting your identity. I am a runner. And boom. Now when we get into the E, it's to eradicate limiting beliefs. The only thing that can stop any one of us is ourselves, and not believing that we can accomplish something. I would ask that everybody listening right now, just try to touch your nose. And if you actually touched your nose right now, you didn't try, you actually did it. And the language that we create, language is the creator of all things. The language that we use and the language we create is also a telltale sign of whether or not we are going to achieve the things we want. And I don't want anyone to try to do anything that I just said. I want you to give it a shot, because when you say you're going to try to do something, ultimately what you're doing is you're giving yourself an option. And this stuff isn't optional. So I want you to actually eliminate the word try from your vocabulary completely. I'm becoming a better runner. I'm working on spending more time with my family. I'm getting better at saving money, whatever those things are. Not I'm trying to work out more. Because that means that maybe Monday through Wednesday you can, and then Thursday to Sunday, yeah, eat bad food or whatever. So don't try, don't hope, take action. And the R is simply repeat, repeat, repeat. When you do these things, that's ultimately my formula for achieving anything that you want in this life, and breaking systemic trends of adversity, and converting pain into triumph, and again, ultimately just creating that desirable course for life. That's how you become a winner.
Ooh, I love that framework. I really do. I love it when things spell out words. It's so much easier to follow and comprehend where you're going. So thank you. And then I think the question for me comes up to maintaining motivation and consistency. I feel so often that's what you hear. It's okay, cool. Now we have this system, for example, but how do you keep showing up? And we'll go back. You've been so consistent with your podcast, right? 114 episodes. That's amazing. But sometimes people don't have that to keep going. And so how do they stay focused in this framework, especially when faced with obstacles or everyday life?
Yeah, I love that. And the episode today is actually about how do you develop unshakable consistency? Because there are times where, yeah, some days naturally you're going to feel amazing and have all of the juice in the world and you're good to go. And there's other days where it's a struggle. It is tough, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Tony Robbins or Michael Jordan or David Goggins, you name it. Some of these people we talk about all the time, they have the same feelings as well. You know, a key separator from good and great is that the greats simply don't stop. They'll still put their foot in front of their left foot in front of the right foot and keep going, versus good can make things optional. And for me, I think the biggest thing is when you really assign meaning to it. That's why that identify what's important to you and what does success look like is so important. Because for me, even with this podcast, and there's days where, Jamie, I didn't want to record solo episodes, but the meaning behind the podcast for me, it's a way that I get to fulfill my purpose. And my purpose is to help people establish a foundation for sustained success by developing systems that enable you to accomplish your goals and break systemic trends of adversity. When I remind myself of that and the meaning that this is why I'm really doing this, even me saying that, like I want to go record 5 more episodes right now, just saying that. So when you assign real meaning to it, or even here's the fitness one too, because a lot of people mention they want to become more fit. And I'll say, great, that's awesome. Well, why? Like, why is that important? Well, I want to be able to go run laps with my kid around the park. Like, when that's really your driving factor, and it's not just, oh, that sounds cool, I want to go do it. That in itself really holds a lot of weight and will get you going. So there's one. Number 2 is going back and tell people about it, because it makes it a lot harder for somebody to not do something if they tell you, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. You know, even Jamie, you know that I'm working on building out this course, Unshakable Discipline Mastermind. It's happening in bits and pieces, and it will be a sustainable and launched product. And part of that, there's meaning to it, but 2, it's important to me that I keep my word to you and to now other people that are going to tune into this podcast. I'm making it public. I'm making it known. So therefore, it makes it harder for me not to do that thing, because I, like you and many other people that are listening, value being their word. The third is visualize the outcomes of what does being consistent in that thing get you? What does being consistent all of the time, if you make the choice to push past that day or the days that you don't want to do it, what does that get you closer to? The podcasts and getting out 52 in a row every Monday, I think about, man, I close my eyes, every one of these episodes gets me closer to, having this amazing podcast studio of my own that's this exclusive space that people really want to be in, and I get to interview some of the top thought leaders in the world, but now in person. And I visualize myself just sitting down across the room from, say, somebody like a Lewis Howes or a Rich Roll, someone like that. And you can't do that without being consistent. And reward your progress. I'm going to take my girlfriend out on some sort of date this week. Like, hey, let's celebrate this thing. And then build a system around it. Those are the 5 things that I offer people to stay consistent. And I really think I could have probably stopped at number 1 and just remember, like, why are you doing this? What's the real meaning behind it? But I felt called to bring in the other 4 as well, and especially since it's so fresh to me.
Yeah, those are great. Those are so great. And when you talk about systems, because I know that's like the main thing that you help people to create. I mean, if you were thinking of the number one system that you feel like is necessary to accomplishing your goal, I would love to hear your advice on what that one system would be. But then I also think I want to emphasize right now, Ryan is running multiple businesses. He's got all of these things going on, and he's also working full time at Boeing and has an incredible professional career as well. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I have XYZ goal, but I don't have any time. And then time is becoming your restraint. I just want to, like, I've been able to witness Ryan showing up and doing the work, even if, like he just said, it's in little chunks. Those chunks are what is propelling him forward and getting him into a momentum. So the next, I mean, Ryan, you're just going to like wake up one day and it's going to be done because you've taken the right action step by step to just make it happen. And so I had to bring that in. But yeah, I would love to hear what system you love helping people implement probably the most.
Yeah, the most is helping people realize that they have the time and that we get to create time as we see fit. And for me, like the number one thing, I won't shut up about this, as I write literally, there's not a single day that I don't write out what it is that I'm going to focus on. And right behind me, you can see my whiteboard there, Jamie, that there's not a single day that I don't start without looking at my goals that have been written down, because every day that I write down, here's what I'm going to do. And every day I look at what ultimately are the intentions for the year. It just bakes it further into my subconscious that it's only a matter of when. It's never a matter of if, when you commit to this lifestyle. And there's never a single day that I even leave my corporate role. The last thing I do every single day is I print my calendar for the next day. And I write down what are the 3 things that I'm going to focus on tomorrow. So when I get into the office tomorrow, I've already built it into my subconscious. Here are my 3 things that I'm going to do. And there's no guesswork. That's the thing. Like, I eliminate all guesswork for my life, but then that's what I help other people do. We have 50,000 to 80,000 thoughts that circulate our minds every day. That's according to various studies. Basically what that means is that our minds are constantly running. And if we don't take the time to map out, like, you know what? I may think I need to do 8,000 things right now, but it's really only 2 to 3. And by taking the time to extract that and actually look at it, it also helps diffuse a lot of stress that may be pent up, and it shows people like, oh, actually, yeah, I do have time to go do X, Y, and Z. And I can make that time block 3 times a week to go work out or to read and spend time with my family. So write everything down. And then the next thing is habit stacking. Another thing from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. The easiest way to build a habit is to stack it on top of an existing habit. So everyone's got something that they probably have on autopilot every day. What do people do as soon as they get out of the shower? I'm pretty damn certain everyone goes to grab a towel. Because why? Because you've done it 1,000 times, millions of times, tons of thousands of times. A lot of people make coffee first thing in the morning. So let's say you want to become a better reader and read more books. Okay. Then you literally write down on a piece of paper, like, after I make my morning coffee, autopilot, right? You're going to do it no matter what. I will read for 20 minutes. And you put your book right next to the coffee machine. And now you're creating this new program in your brain. Like, oh, coffee? Okay. Now it's time to read. That's the beauty of the human mind and the body and just the power that we possess when we take a step back, write down what we want, look at it, and there you go. That's system building for me in its simplest form. Grab a pen and paper and be intentional about, what are 3 things you can do, and then align your habits around those and stack habits on top of existing habits, and boom, there's literally nothing that we can't do, and there's no person that you can't create within yourself. We all have seeds of greatness within us, and it's, what seeds are we planting? Are we planting for a harvest, or are we planting weeds? And that's the choice we get to make every day.
Yeah, this actually reminds me, every single morning, Kylo comes down the stairs and he wants breakfast right away. It's like, he knows he wakes up, it's breakfast time. But one thing he started doing is now he's like, gummy, gummy. And he wants, like, we give him like those kid vitamin gummies. And so he wants one first time. So that's like habit stacking. He's like, breakfast, gummy. Like, I get that with my breakfast. And so that's kind of cool because I see it's a habit clearly formed in him from habit stacking. So that's pretty cool. And I'm curious, like, personally, I have this maybe not so good habit of actually, okay, I'll have a goal and I'm a pretty good integrator. So I can sit down and I can say, okay, in order to achieve that, I got to do this, and I'll make like this long list. I can also, put it in the order at which it should be done. It can be all fancy. And then it's really strange. I'll almost like I could spend weeks rewriting the list and reorganizing the list and doing all of these things with this list. Maybe I'll do pen to paper, and then I'm like, okay, now we're going to write it and we're going to do it in a Google Doc. And then I'll move it over to a Google Doc. And then it's like, before we know it, we've moved around a list or rewrote it a bunch of times, but like, it's still just a list. I'd be curious, like, what's your experience with that and why might that be a thing?
So if I'm hearing that correctly, does it sounds like to me we make a lot of lists and lists get transferred from one list to another list, yet the list remains a list and there's not so much like the action itself is making the list versus taking action on the list. Is that right?
Yeah. And I've been aware that I have a habit of doing that. So I really work now to like check something off right away. And so now I'll like highlight the things I'm doing next, cross them out fully. And so I definitely make better progress. So like if I'm not careful, I'll fall back into that trap again. And I do it. It's very interesting.
When you do fall back in the trap at times, what do you feel puts you in the trap?
I almost feel it's too big of a thing to do. Like I don't chunk it down enough. So I know that you've built out like a funnel now, or you're working on a funnel. So I would almost put like funnel versus very specific items in there. And then so when I look at that on the list, I'm like, that's a big thing. Not going to do that today. So then I'll continue transferring it. Like, yeah, we still need to do that. Or I might chunk it down like you need a homepage, then you need a blog, then you need a podcast or whatever. And then it's like, those are still really big things. Like, move it over. And then I think that's why they're too big of projects to where it's just not ever a good time to start it.
And I think that you're answering it. And what I'm going to say is that as I've been on this journey now for over 12 years, when I first started writing things down, what I've found, Jamie, is that less equals more. When I first started this journey, and I have a binder with every goal that I've written down over the last decade now. Wow, and I look back at it, I call it my success book. And one of the elements in there, I've got all the goals archived. And I look back at the earliest years when I started this, and you'll see these massive, massive lists. Like, I thought that more goals equals more ambition. And that the people that we talked about, Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett, you name it, they must they must have 100 goals a year. Like, that's clearly why they're at where they're at. And then I heard something from Jeff Bezos once. And Jeff said a good day for him back when he was CEO of Amazon was if he made 3 good decisions in a day. And that probably has a lot of people scratching their heads like, hold on, Amazon is a behemoth. Yeah. The CEO must be doing 50 things a day. And to hear him say, if I do 3 good things that day, that's a good day for me. And so it made me think, you know what? Well, why am I out here attempting to do 20 things and then you get mad that you only do 2? Yeah. Right? So less equals more. And what are the 1 to 3 things that you can do that day, Jamie, or anyone listening, that's going to propel you forward? And I even fell into my own trap with building out the funnel because I'm looking at all these different pages. And then I asked you, I was like, wait, like, what do I really need to do here? Okay, you need this page and that page. Like, boom, that's so you've coached me in that one, out of that one too. Sometimes we forget, but it's not something I typically will, it's not a trap I'll fall into typically in my personal life or professional life, but here in this new space, I'm like, wait a minute. And now I'm reminding myself, like, hey, dude, less is more. And another thing that I've even shared in one of my modules is the rule of hand. No more than 5 things that are important to you, and no more than 5 things, and I would even say no more than 3 things within each of those 5, like family, faith, fitness, whatever it is that's important to you, for you to focus on. So as the years have gone on, my goals list becomes smaller and smaller, but they're, filled with much, I'd call them higher quality, denser goals. So that's what I believe can help you stay focused and get out of list paralysis and just focus on a couple of small things.
That's really everything. It reminds me of the big, and how are you doing on time?
I'm great. Yeah.
Okay. It reminds me of like the big domino. And I know I've brought that up in sessions before, but it's like, what is that one thing that if we can just knock that down, all the other dominoes would fall? Or like, I know Tim Ferriss brings that up in the 4-Hour Work Week too. He would just sit there. He's like, if you followed me around for the day, you would be really bored. I lay in my hammock, I read books, I go to the gym. He's like, but I am always thinking of what is that one thing that if I could just do that one thing, everything else is easier or irrelevant. So it's like, that's what you need to spend your time focusing on, is what to focus on next. And that was actually something that was coming up when you were speaking. It's like, then how do you choose? Like, what do you know what to focus on then? If you're only going to choose those 3 things, like, how do you make sure those are ultimately the right things to focus on? Because I think there's so much distraction, so many things happening all the time. It's very easy to just choose a path that maybe isn't the right one. So how do you choose before you go to bed at night? You said you print out your list of things you're going to do, the 3 things you're going to do tomorrow. How do you know what those 3 things are and that they're actually in alignment with getting you to your goal?
I love that. So this boils back down to systems and looking at my goals for the year. There's all sorts of different buckets between the podcast, the scholarship, I'm about to launch another nonprofit fundraiser here Thursday, as a matter of fact. And it goes back to creating those time slots. So for instance, even with the podcast, and as a matter of fact, I have 2 things that I wrote down to accomplish today. And that is brainstorming the 2024 plan for the podcast, and then also mapping out this Thursday launch with this next nonprofit that I'm going to announce and fundraiser I'm going to announce on Thursday. There's still a lot of things behind me on that whiteboard that aren't going to get addressed today. They'll be addressed at another point in time, but Monday and Wednesday are my typical podcast focus days, and then wherever I have interviews scattered in between. So for me, that's how I stay focused on addressing each thing is, looking at, okay, my whole week, what time block makes the most sense, or how much time do I believe I'll need to dedicate to this? Because there's only limited time anyways, because the majority of my day is filled at corporate, and you go from there. And every day I always look at, even when I was writing down what I'm going to focus on today, I look back at that whiteboard sometimes and I'm like, okay, does this align to something on there? If it doesn't, then it doesn't get put on the list. So it also helps me ensure that I'm always focusing on the right things, because I can tie it back to the bigger picture. And that's what keeps me going. So map it out in advance, create those time slots, and then choose something or a couple things, no more than 3, that you can focus on that align to the bigger picture. And that's also why it's just so important to understand what is the bigger picture, whether it's for the year, for the quarter, for the decade, however people like to organize their goals.
Thank you so much. So I think that was the main takeaway. If you're listening and you're like, where do I start? I think getting clarity, really getting clarity on what's most important to you in your life. And then only from there can you develop an actual plan to start coming up with the goals and the actions needed to actually get there. So Ryan, remind us again of where we can find you, and then feel free, anything else you feel called to share right now.
Yeah. Well, again, Jamie, it's been so much fun, and I love these conversations. I love this conversation. And where people can find me every Monday, you can tune in to the Win Today podcast. That's available on all platforms. You can find me at ryancass, CASS.com. If you are interested in learning more about Champion Tribe and really being in a community of people that are committed to excelling across the board, not just making money or being super fit, but really being a well-composed, just human across our 5 key pillars, that is championtribe.win. And we have it as .win because we want people to win in all aspects of life. And those are the main ways. I do publish a good bit on Instagram and Ryan A. Cass, and One Day Today. You can find that from my main page. And those are the main ways to find me. As far as my closing goes, and ultimately, 4 things that I ask of anyone, and we covered a lot on how you build systems and the winner framework, but if I boil it down, ultimately, Jamie, I believe that when people are intentional about their lives, and that consists of writing your goals down, but also intentional about who you surround yourselves with, intentional about the information you consume, intentional in general, and you focus on challenging yourself, doing hard things, and helping at least one person. By doing those things and writing it all down, there's nothing that we can't create in this life. And it's never a matter of if, it's simply a matter of when. That's what I want people to know.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you, as like a final question, what success looks like for you. And I feel like you've just summed that up in your final remarks there. But if you have anything else you want to share to that topic, because we've spoken so much today about intentionally designing your life and figuring out what success means to you, and then taking the actions to make it a reality. But like, what is success to you?
Success to me is living life by design. And I love that you asked that. I actually journaled about it recently and really thought long and hard. It's like, you know what, of all the things you can tie it to, I think when you live life by design, that's one of the most empowering things, because everything that is happening for you, or most of the things that are happening for you, are a result of you being intentional and giving back and experiencing the fruits of your labor by challenging yourself. And for me, I design all of these elements into my life, and I get to live it out. And that, to me, is what success looks like. And as a byproduct of that, there's fortunately, a few more people that are starting to tune in and follow along, and we'll see where it goes. But it's still, to me, the greatest accomplishment is the impact that's made in the life of another person. And if one person today tunes in and it's like, wow, that conversation with Jamie and Ryan really helped me develop like a goal setting framework. Boom. Like, that to me is the coolest thing in the world. Far cooler than anything you may read on my bio or any award. Like, that's not what gets me. It's the impact that we get to make in the lives of others as a result of living out our purpose and being intentional.
Well, thank you again so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.